not my problem. When I'm feeling these metal, and I'm pissed and I'm when I lie and I'm missing all of the time, but I'm never sure what I'm missing. Please let me shout.
All right. Tuesday, start of the week for us podcast-wise, for Prospect Podcast. I'm here, Coach Schumann. I'm with Coach D, and we have our special guest of the day, Coach DeCristoforo, head coach and athletic director of St. Peter's in Staten Island. We're excited to really talk to him. Some New York City football, some Staten Island football, and talk about all that. It's definitely totally different than, guys we've talked to around the country, different things that they have to deal with. And although Staten Island, actually, there's some really great facilities out there. There really are. That's the one place in the city that really, I guess Brooklyn might have some decent fields too, right? But Staten Island definitely has a real strong tradition of really good football. So we're really excited to talk to Coach about that today. Coach, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me. I told Coach D I've been following a little bit, especially you had PJ Acuri most recently. He actually played for me at St. Peter's, so super proud of him. But it was the first time I was like, "Oh, this is a nice podcast." So I've been following ever since.
Yeah, we've been. What are we at? Like one? I don't know. Are we over 190 yet, or
209 today?
209. 209. 209.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, it's rolling downhill. So we've really done a lot over the last couple of years. Really, we ramped it up over the last couple of years, and it's been great. We get to talk to a lot of coaches, a lot of ex-players, trainers, you name it, college coaches, high school coaches. So covering the gamut. It's really great. So we're excited to talk to you. St. Peter's has really been a growing program, and you're really starting to really pick up steam. If you could talk about, your background, how you got into coaching and become an athletic director, and kind of your journey up until this point.
Sure. And again, if I get you bored, just give me like a hand signal or something, and I'll so
Coach, before you go on, we've had college coaches that have been at 20 stops in 25 years, and a couple that have gone through all 20 stops.
Yeah, so I was a captain at Monsignor Farrell when I played. Obviously, Farrell was always the standard on Staten Island, one of the premier programs in New York City. Lucky enough to play for who I feel is arguably the most legendary coach on Staten Island, Ben Cerullo. Learned football the right way, in my personal opinion. And then I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to play at Wagner College. But ironically, being on Staten Island, I guess things happen for a reason. I didn't even make it through the first camp. Probably around the 10th day, I batted a ball down. I was a safety, and I felt something shoot in my wrist, like a gunshot almost. And my pinky and my ring finger on my right hand went numb. And I just knew something was wrong. And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor immediately was like, this has to be reconstructive surgery. So that's prior to even starting anything. So I had no aspirations of coaching whatsoever. If I was away somewhere, I think it would have been much different. But now I'm standing there. I'm not 2 feet in at Wagner College because I just started. But obviously, I'm always 2 feet in at my high school at Monsignor Farrell. I was out for the season. The surgery wasn't going to be scheduled until December. So I wound up helping out that particular year. And then obviously I was like, wow, coaching is pretty cool. You get all the excitement of being involved and being passionate and having influence on everything and all those various things you could do, and you don't have to get run into anymore. So I was like, this really isn't that bad of a gig, coaching, with no anticipation of coaching whatsoever. I had surgery that December, so then by spring ball, I wasn't ready to do anything. And just, timing wise, the varsity staff at Farrell basically was at their lowest point, maybe in the history of the school. And Coach Cerullo cleaned out the coaching staff. and he basically said, I was about 18 years old. Would you like to be the varsity defensive back coach for next season if you're not going to play? So I dove in on coaching, and that year, which was 1998, dating myself, I was a sophomore in college. The kids who were on varsity, they were on the JV when I was a senior. So it was kids that I was familiar with, but also I had that close age gap that I had to make sure I could maintain. And
Mhm.
I think it was really dumb luck, to be honest with you. But we went from Farrell having its worst season in about 50 years immediately to the AAA championship game. And we had 28 interceptions that year. And
Wow.
honestly, really, it was just because I was standing there and there were good players.
Right.
But I got some coaching credit for that. And then it had been a while. And then in 1999, I was like, I just really want to commit to coaching. And ironically, in 1999 and 2000 being my senior year of college, we won the AAA championship in 99 and 2000 back to back. And obviously, I said to myself, all right, 3 championship games in 3 years. This must really be my thing. I must be some sort of a genius coach guy. He really let me kind of take over as the defensive coordinator. And so 3 championship games in 3 years. We won back to back. And then here we are in 2025, and no Staten Island team has won the AAA championship since. So I guess it wasn't always going to be championship games and things of that nature. So I was at Farrell from 98. In 2000 and 2001, I graduated college. I got a job at Morgan Stanley. And then obviously 2001 roughly was September 11th. And the whole time I was working in the city, I was like, this is not for me. I want to be a coach. I had the bite. I remember calling my dad the first day coming home on the ferry saying, Dad, this isn't for me. I want to be a coach. I had no education background. And then, September 11th hit, and I was like, I definitely want to follow working with kids and things of that nature. And then the following September, which was September of '02, I started my teaching career because that was the only way I could be a full-time coach at that time. And they were kind enough at
Mhm.
my alma mater to give me a job teaching math, even though I was more of a finance guy. And then it just went from there. And then we did another couple championship games, '03, '04, '05. We did very well. I built a good reputation with those kind of stats and where we were at that time. Even though, again, I'll go back to I was just lucky to be around a very good group of kids. And then in 2010, Coach Cerullo stepped down, and I interviewed to be the head coach at Farrell, along with a couple other guys that were assistants with us for all those years. And they wound up going a different route, which I was very disappointed. But it wasn't like one
Mhm.
of my guys got the job. It was someone from outside who had kind of college coaching experience, which I fully understood. Another alumni guy. And they basically were like, you can be his main assistant in the building. And I was like, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do. And then I got a call. It kind of got around that I was looking to not so happy with what was going on there. I still love everybody there to this day, and it was still my brothers and stuff like that. So ironically, St. Peter's is closer to my neighborhood. I'm in the North Shore of Staten Island. Farrell's more Mid Island. I actually played stickball and stuff in the St. Peter's parking lot, growing up. They called and they said, we heard you'd be maybe interested in coming over here to teach and coach. And I was like, this is a blessing from God. And I hopped over to St. Peter's.
Mhm.
So, everything happens for a reason. Um, and then I guess, if you turned it into a 30 for 30, uh, 2 years later, I'm the head coach at St. Peter's. And, St. Peter's was struggling. There was only 19 kids in the program. 2 years later, we were the number one seed in the AA. We went 9-1 my first year. And the next year, we made it to the AAA playoffs, which was a very big deal. It was only the second trip to the AAA playoffs for St. Peter's. And who do we draw in the first round? We draw
Every
Monsignor
time.
Farrell. So
Every
that was my shining moment, and we actually beat them, and we beat the coach that they hired, who again is a great guy. It was very rewarding to me to like come out on the other end.
Of
And
course.
then the next year, the guy that I actually would have stayed with became the coach the very next year after we wound up beating them, and that was in I guess 15, and we made the AAA playoffs again. We had an away game this time, and that was at Monsignor Farrell, of course. So to finish my arc, I guess you would say like my revenge tour. It was a playoff game. Peters had only won one AAA playoff game ever. We're going for the second one. And as time expired, we went for two and we won. And I was able to, win those two games at home and at Farrell. And then from there, St. Peter's football was kind of on the map, I guess you would say, to start. We haven't beat them since, so there's nothing really to say. Like, I'm a big fan of recent history. And now the head coach is actually a guy that I had coached, so I'm super proud of that. He was in those years where we were very successful. So I consider him a very close friend and a brother like anybody else that you would have, coached or played for. And then now here we are at St. Peter's. We had built it up to where when I started, there was 19 kids in the program. We got as high as 120 freshman team. And last year was probably one of our most successful years ever. First time we won 10 games. We had the offensive player of the year, the defensive player of the year, and the lineman of the year in the CHSFL AA division. So definitely at a high point, 25, I guess, I don't even know what year this is, maybe 25, 26 years in. I'm super excited where the program is, and I'm energized to coach and just keep building on the success that we've had before.
Awesome journey. I wonder, by the way, if because he's around your age, one of the guys that coaches with me, we coach our sons together, Anthony Brandifine. I don't know if
Of course, yes. So
I figured you might.
Here we go.
So of course. So again, as I said, I've been lucky where if you Staten Island royalty in football with Coach Cerullo, he goes back to the days of New York football when Curtis
Anthony's
and New York,
father, right, was a coach. Yep.
So Anthony's father, the Brandifine family, is New York royalty when New York was like, I guess you're talking like, the Bergen Catholics of the world in the tri-state area. But New York was legendary, and the Brandifine family is a product of that. And I am also a product of one of the reasons why Staten Island is successful is because we have the Staten Island Boys Football League for about 80 years, where kids from other boroughs come to play there. Obviously, it's a little different now.
Right.
But Anthony's dad was my first coach in the Staten Island Boys Football League. So it's all connected, but the Brandifine name is enshrined somewhere on Staten Island.
Yep. Yeah. They're great people. Their kids are great, really good athletes and great kids. And Anthony coaches with me. We coach. I was a high school coach for 20 years, but we now coach 10U. So
yeah, that's great.
We're coaching.
Anthony's a great guy.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun. I figured you might when you said the timeline of when you were in high school. I figured you definitely had crossed paths.
Yeah. So point. Anthony, I think, is a year older, and ironically, his father was like, I think when we were going into 8th grade, his dad was like, I'm gonna keep coaching if you're gonna stay around and play for us. We were on the Raiders at that time in the Staten Island Boys Football League. So that was my first. Cool. That was my first coach, and my first introduction was the Brandifine family. So I was lucky like that because, as we all know, sometimes you might get especially those days, you might get like a knucklehead dad who doesn't know what he's doing, and then you're turned off to the game of football. Yep. I was lucky
and then it ruins your entire vision of everything. Like,
yes,
we talk about it all the time. Like same for me, coming up, youth. And I'm from a very small, tight town, but those guys know how to coach football, and they made you love it. And it's really hard because, especially now, being older and being in different places, you see that first experience could be totally shit. And then that's it. You lose a guy that could be a really good player because those guys turn it off. I look back all the time and say, I was really fortunate to have really good coaches in every facet that not only knew what they were doing football wise, but they were good dudes that set you up and knew what was going on.
Yes,
that's really honestly a key thing.
Yeah. So again, and also I don't know what you would call it, like my obsession almost with Staten Island historic football was
Right.
triggered by being, I guess you would say, influenced at a young age by such a legendary family. Like you don't, and when I'm in sixth grade, I don't know what he's talking about, the Curtis Newdorp games from 1972 or whatever they are. But
Right.
starting to pay attention was something that, like, the Brandifine family really put into us. And then I actually started going to watch some games with their influence at the time. Like Susan Wagner High School was a dominant regional powerhouse.
Yep.
And I remember sneaking on the field and watching kids play at Susan Wagner and really only connecting it to Newdorp and public school. And then all of a sudden, one glorious day, the crowd was packed to the gills, and it was just another day for us to go watch a game. And all of a sudden, this team of 100 people, all wearing white and fancy uniforms, called the Monsignor Farrell Lions, they came in and they stomped Susan Wagner on their field, and I was like, I need to get with those guys. Like, who are they? And that was kind of
cool stuff.
Yeah.
Really cool. Staten Island football is unique in New York City, like I kind of mentioned a little bit before, other than a couple of places in Brooklyn and maybe Erasmus Hall, that which I think is also in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Yeah, where football is really important on Staten Island. And
Yes.
So people kind of equate New York City football as having, they might have some athletes. They might have. There's been a lot of superstars over the years that have come out of New York City football, but Staten Island not just has the really good players, but has had traditional programs for a long time. And a lot of people don't realize that, because when they think New York City football, they always think like Manhattan or where it's not as it's not as many fields, to be honest.
Right.
The hardest part is not as many fields. Talk about the tradition of Staten Island football, because even as a kid, like I grew up in North Jersey and Bergen County, which obviously had really good football, but we used to always read about Tottenville and Monsignor and Newdorp and different places, and we used to always wonder, like, how good is it really? But there was always a lot of coverage on it, especially with New York, the papers don't cover football as much as they used to, but the New York City papers used to cover Staten Island football so good. Talk about that tradition. I mean, literally the box scores, Derek, used to be in the Times and in the Post. Like it used to be. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. They used to do the rankings and all that.
And I'll tell you what's crazy too is like people. Moving down where we did, Dave, right? Because Dave's Bergen County, Morris County, we're North Jersey guys. But when we relocated, to Central Jersey, people don't realize how close we really are to Staten Island. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think people understand that. If because you're in your like tight little North Jersey bubble, like, dude, it is right freaking there.
Yeah, it's right there.
Even for me, I went to, I finished my career at Montclair State, which is, 15 minutes from the city. Guys don't because everybody's like, oh, traffic. Like, no, dude, I could have got to Staten Island in 30 minutes and been, hey, what's going on? It's really, so geographically, it's close to Jersey. And so those things, I always thought it would be so cool if we played like an all-star game or something, like, you know what I mean? We used to have the Governor's Bowl, which was, New Jersey, New York, that's faded. A lot of the all-star games have faded, but I always thought to have a Staten Island, like Jersey little game would have been so cool, because it was just like, we were aware of it. Like, even Dave, I grew up like same thing. The box scores were in the paper. So, and very comparable.
Remember when we were in the New York, New Jersey game? We used to have who ran it? He ran it for the New York team. He was from Staten Island. I can't believe it.
Al Paterzo?
Yes. Wait, no. Maybe that was the name.
I remember. I coached in the last one.
In my mind. But yeah, I mean, the guys from Staten Island ran the New York team. They would work with the guys from Erasmus, Danny.
Yes. Al, the guy, the coach, the legendary coach again, Al Paterzo. He's the Susan Wagner guy through that history of legendary that
Right.
run. He is actually, there's a huge mural up for him. He's obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, he is the PSAL's all-time winningest coach in
Oh
history.
wow.
He also recently, I think he just stepped down because he actually got me a job on the board there. So I'm very thankful to
Nice.
Coach Sill. He was the president up until last year of the New York State High School Football Coaches Association. So
Got it.
Wow.
he's been involved literally forever.
Yeah.
If there was a game like that back in those days, he was organizing. He was everything that Staten Island's done. Al Paterzo deserves a lot of credit, not just for Susan Wagner, but everywhere.
Absolutely. No, it's pretty cool. Talk about the traditions of Staten Island football and kind of development of the athletes there, where they have that love for football. Talk about that because
Well,
yeah.
Again, Staten Island, I think, is unique in first and foremost the history of the Staten Island Boys Football League. Now everybody has a youth league, right? There's Pop Warner teams and there's travel teams, but there's still got to be thousands of kids playing in the Staten Island Boys Football League. Now, every borough has a youth organization, but there's no league to that size anywhere. So I think that starts kind of the obsession for football. And then obviously now, Staten Island teams were dominant in the era of less teams. So there was a time when if you wanted to play Catholic football, the only place you could go was Monsignor Farrell. And that
Right.
set off a generation of, legendary success. Like Farrell went on, at some points, Farrell was nationally ranked, and they went to play Moeller High School in Cincinnati to be the number one team. So that history is there. And then, as I said, through all those years of Curtis versus Newdorp, and then the rise of Susan Wagner, all through those years, these teams were just dominant teams in the area. Obviously, Jersey has certainly caught up and surpassed, and Westchester and Long Island, but there was a time where Staten Island was it. And I think Staten Islanders still believe that and haven't given up on that at all. But there was a fundamental generation of super success that tied to people feeling the way that they feel about football to this day. And then, with the storylines and things, I don't know that this is accurate, but our basketball coach went into the Hall of Fame in the CHSAA, and when the president got up and spoke about it, he said he was able to speak so much about the basketball coach because he was able to go to the Staten Island Advance or SI Live and read about him. And he said that the Staten Island Advance is one of the very few, I believe he might have said the tri-state area or on the East Coast, that is still regularly, daily doing high school sports stories. So I think that kind of amps it up to where you're saying, like, there's always something big. The kids see themselves on the front page of the paper frequently.
Yep.
People think they're dealing with something bigger than it is because of the buildup of the Staten Island Advance. And again, there are storylines behind everything. And I will say again, it doesn't matter what the two teams are, but if you have a Staten Island versus Staten Island game, it's as big and intense as any crowd, anywhere. And
Right.
it's what I am really enjoying about it, to be honest with you, the most at this point is that I have a younger son. He's 10, and there are
Oh, he's
lots
in
of
it. Nice.
yeah, there are lots of kids now. I notice. I look around. I'm like, none of these kids are paying attention. They're just
Right.
running around. What I like most is that coming to St. Peter's on a Saturday afternoon or going to Monsignor Farrell on a Friday night is the regular rotation of social activities in the neighborhood. Like, obviously we want to win, but I'm very excited for how the whole neighborhood feels. Like when we played in the semifinal and in the championship, the local, I don't know if it's allowed to do in Jersey, but the local bars and restaurants, they were all having like live streaming events. When we went
Oh,
there,
that's awesome.
yeah, when we went there after the game, it was already all decked out in blue and yellow.
Oh
And
shit.
I just see the passion in the neighborhood for these sporting events just getting bigger and bigger. And I think especially when it's a Staten Island versus Staten Island team, um, it just amplifies it that much more. Like people care, and it's not just football, to be honest. Like the Staten Island High School basketball
Right.
tournament is really, it really isn't a champion of anything else except the Staten Island. All 11 teams play in a tournament, and you're talking like lines out the door, people like jumping over
Cool.
themselves trying to get in. So the fan base is passionate. People are passionate about where they went to high school. And as I
Right.
said, it's really becoming a thing to bring your kids around and go to games and things of that nature.
Well,
Yeah,
the
it's a huge
media and the
piece of
media
it.
side of it, like, because we see it now, down the shore conference, how well it's covered, and that's important. Like, people don't realize how, like, Staten Island Advance covering it and covering in depth. I think that that's such a huge deal because we grew up in an era, all of us, where the papers covered things, and you had a huge, this is before the online boom. Right now, the online boom does a nice job with highlights, and you can put your stuff up there, which is great. I mean, great for the kids, but it's really you pubbing yourself. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Versus,
Yes.
there's a difference with you pubbing yourself versus others pubbing you.
Yes.
There's a credibility factor to it that's at another
yeah.
level, and that's what the newspapers and they bring to that, right? So,
Yes.
as I understand from a business side of it, for the
Yeah.
newspapers, it's probably very, very difficult, right? Because people don't buy newspapers the way that they used to. But
Nope.
from a coverage standpoint, they're still like, I mean, that was my favorite day. The
Yes.
next day,
Oh
right?
God, who would? Yeah, you
The
love that,
box
right? You love
scores, if you saw your name, if there was an article or a blurb.
Friday morning, right? Friday morning paper with the preview.
Yep.
Am I mentioned? And then
Yeah.
Saturday morning or Sunday morning, because my high school was a
Right.
Saturday play team. So you were waiting for that paragraph and
Yes.
hoping that your name was somewhere in it, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And then you develop. I mean, shit. I still talk to reporters that covered me when I played. Not now because I'm in coaching, but just because they interviewed me almost every game for 2-3 years. You start to develop relationships with some of these guys, and then
Yes.
even when I transferred back home from Sacred Heart to Montclair State, they were still covering. They were doing stories on guys in college because they had advanced their careers.
Again,
oh shit, I know this kid. There's a relationship here, right? And now, one of the guys that wrote one of probably the biggest article on me ever is now, Art Stapleton, who's the beat writer for the Giants.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
those guys, and that was like, that's a thing because high school football ends for everybody. And this is a time when you feel like a celebrity or a high level player. That's what that coverage does. And like Dave said, it's different when it's coming from like internal almost to now other people are talking about you. Like you're starting to see it right now, right? Because season previews are coming out and guys are, now you just see all their posts are pictures of paragraphs of who said what about what team and this guy in and that. And I think Staten Island does that a little different, and that's what separates it, right?
Yes.
And do you agree, Coach?
Yeah. So again, like what you're saying is that, we all know as coaches, like I won't mention any websites, but that the coach submitted, a form and that became an article about, and it's not as sincere. So the other part of that is like anything else is you go back to the reporter. I'll say my good friend Charlie DeBass, the legend from the Staten Island Advance. So back when I was playing, Charlie was doing it. And Charlie is the lead guy now for all sports through all of these years. Now you're talking about kids, Charlie will love this, but like they feel they're like meeting and talking to,
oh my God, yeah. It's
this
Adam
guy
Schefter.
who's covered my dad, or he's the man. Like, so when you get the opportunity to speak to Charlie at a game, and when Charlie's on the sideline, that you're the game of the week. There's going to be pictures. So, Charlie
like
being there for that long.
In Jersey, you had like Mike Quick, right? And Mike Quick's been around forever, right? Like, and he covers the entire tri-state. So that's Saturday morning broadcast. I think he actually did it last year with Matt, with one of the Sims. Maybe it was.
Yes,
Maddie.
he does it. He's still. I think he still does it.
Yeah,
the
so they
mornings,
do like
yeah.
a little Saturday morning radio show, right? I think it's on ESPN Radio or whatever that is, and
Yep.
they talk about the Tri-State, right? And they'll
Yep.
touch on Staten Island, they'll touch on Jersey, Long Island games. It's look, I still get a little giddy and tingles when you hear it, but it's really cool when you have guys that have been in it that long. And hey, I covered your dad, right?
Yes.
Or they can make the links to, hey, 2025 team is a lot like the 1999
Yeah,
team
know,
from,
and you
know
could
what I'm saying?
you can reference and respect his opinion on it. Like, how does this compare to this team, and what do you expect about this? And
Right.
again, it still goes back to as you already mentioned, a lot of our players don't subscribe to the physical paper. So when we have a big win, or I see that there was an article about a player online, just like in 1996 or 1999 when we won in 1999 when we won the championship, we wound up a couple of the coaches, we stayed up until the Staten Island Advance was dropped off to get a
That's
copy.
cool.
So to this
Cool.
day, I will still go and grab. I don't get it delivered. I shouldn't say that, but
No, you go
on
get
that,
it at the
I'll go to the
local
deli.
whatever shop. Yes, the local
Yeah, and
bodega, whatever it is.
I'll grab a stack, and you know what? The kid who's on the front page of it, it's as good as being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They don't
Yep.
know any better. And I get a copy for
Yep.
mom, I get a copy for dad. Hopefully they get it framed. But you're talking
Right.
about, if last year we were very lucky to have 10 wins. So you have a lot of things that you can print and give out, and it's still as exciting as it ever was. And as I said, I don't know the facts on that, but one of the passionate reasons why Staten Island sports and high school rivalries are the way that they are is because of the Staten Island Advance. And Coach, going to your point about following kids, one of our basketball kids actually he's at Purdue now, and Purdue's the #1 team in the country. So for basketball, so the guy Charlie DeVies, obviously when they allow him to, he's actually doing a story on following. He's been at Purdue basketball practices, and the pictures are from behind the scenes, and he's doing a full article of like, let's follow this Staten Island kid to the #1 team in the country. And again, I think it makes it very exciting that one day you're the front page as a kid playing Purdue
Hell yeah.
basketball, and then the next day is the quarterback from St. Peter's. So it's exciting, and it does make it. I'm glad that it does, but it does make it seem bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, right.
No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. My favorite of the all time Texas used to have Dave Campbell. They still do, but now it's owned by, I think, the AP. Dave Campbell's Texas football, which used to cover every single team throughout Texas. And when I was in high school, I used to get it delivered to my house, and would have a preview on. I don't know how many teams it was, but it was like
Yeah.
it still comes out in Texas. They call it like the
Yeah.
Bible. It's Dave Campbell, and it's a page by page team preview of every high school team
It's incredible,
in Texas,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, look, Jersey's a small state, but I mean, there's 300 something football playing high schools, right? And they kind of break it into north, central, south. Because obviously we finished with 5 group champs, right, overall, because we've added another game, which is nice now, and then 2 parochial group champs. So there's 7 overall state champions at the end of it. And one of the things that Dave and I talked about going from north to central was the overall coverage of football where it is, right? So we've kind of seen a little bit with a company, Big State Sports. It started out as just more sports, right? Morris County and Sussex County, and now they've grown. George Muha, a great guy. I was there kind of with him a little bit doing some stuff when I was in North Jersey when he was just getting his feet wet, but that was his whole premise behind, hey, I want something that high school kids can remember forever, right?
Yes.
And something that everybody can go back to. And with the technology advancements and social media, that's kind of gone away a little bit. But he was always real big on, hey, I still want this to be something for these guys to go. And I get there's a lot of courage, right? And we've seen different areas that they just do it better, right? And like you said, I think the intimacy of still having that guy on the sideline when you look down and you're like, oh, that's
here he
so
is, yeah.
right. He's usually got either a bag or he's got a million like press tags,
Yep.
right? That because he's been to all of these coverages and events.
Yep.
And you knew, like, and they knew it, right? Like they knew, okay, like these kids, it matters. These coaches, it matters.
Yes.
And I think that's something that like I said, it's just a big piece of high school football. Even if guys don't like, really kind of understand it when they're in the moment in terms of like, hey man, 20 years down the road, you have a son or a daughter, like, and you pull out that old school scrapbook, right?
Yep.
With all the little cutouts. Cause I still have
Absolutely.
it with,
Yep.
I mean, they're not even pasted in the things yet. You know what I'm saying?
They're just
like
sitting there, yeah.
And this is 2004 and they're still sitting there, right? So
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's just something to have. And coach, you being so invested in Staten Island football and the history of it, I think will like bleed through to some of, like, at least one of your assistants is going to take that on or catch that flu, what I'm saying, as they go.
I honestly, I just feel we're not gonna, I don't know. I take a great amount of pride in the fact that I learned from a guy who, as I said, it's all connected back. He was a captain at Newdorp. And again, I think the 5 AAA championships, and we're not the Junction Boys, but we still do things an old school way. And I think that's important. I like to say, I try to advertise to parents that I don't say we're going to win or lose, but we are going to be the school where they're going to get in trouble if they don't have the right socks and the socks aren't pulled up and the shirt's not tucked in. That's just the way that we do things. And I try to take it back to that level. I want to try to make them, mentally tough and things of that nature. But that's still, I don't want to say it's an old school mentality, but I do believe that it is, and it's tied to the mission at St. Peter's in general. Like, we're probably one of the only schools that still gives 5 days a week detention if you come late or your shirt isn't tucked in. So it trickles out onto the field. But I take pride in myself as a Staten Island historian for football, like kind of connected in the middle from the old school and for the younger guys. And again, you mentioned assistants. Like, I have a co-head coach, a guy named Rob Sika, and he was a player for me at Farrell when I was the defense coordinator. And one of his best friends also played on that same defense, is the head coach at Farrell. So we have this connection all through the different teams and things of that nature. But I do consider myself quite a historian, tying it back and trying to give those lessons to the kids today. Like, if kids say, why do we do things the way we do? I say that this is, tried and true, how it's been done for a long time.
Right. There's no doubt about it. Talk about how, since taking over your program, you really built it up, and the steps you really took to grow the program and get it to where it is today.
So the first thing, Coach, honestly, was I guess my personal shining accomplishment was really rebranding. I don't want, not knocking anything before, like, the uniforms were not something you would be proud of. They were kind of like, Pee-wee type uniforms. And again, our administration has been phenomenal the whole time. It was like, what is your vision for this? The other thing was that the school's colors are blue and yellow. And I noticed a lot of navy and gold and, like, I don't know if Zavarian colors, which is fine for Zavarian, but I was confused as to all the blues and yellows.
That's not St. Peter's. Right.
Right. So what we did was we just really simple. We went to Nike, and I said, this is how much. This is now 2013, before everybody had Nike. I was like, I really want us to have the nicest uniforms if possible. I wrote an email. I said, yes, we're a private school, but most kids get financial assistance and they're maxed out. It's hard to, find any extra stuff in the budget. And they came back and they were like, well, what do you pay for uniforms now? And I was like, oh, it's this much per. And they were like, all right, we'll beat that by $1 and we'll start from there. So we were able to save money by dressing nicer. And then honestly, the trick was, if you say St. Peter's Boys High School, you're talking about a legendary basketball program. So basically, we just kind of looked through all college uniforms and we landed on LSU and the yellow helmet. And I was like, all right, so now what are we going to put? And we wound up saying, all right, so what's 3 letters? And we turned it to STP.
Right.
And when we first did that, which to this day is my greatest pride. When we first did that, a lot of people were like, that's stupid. What is that? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what that is. No one's going to know. And then now it's about 10 years later, when you say STP, you know you're referring to St. Peter's Boys High School on Staten Island. And more importantly to me, is that when I look at the basketball team play and they have STP now across their chest,
That's awesome.
it's engraved on the court now. It's on the new field. Is that our branding situation, really, really took off. And as we all know, kids care about the sport and they care about football and they care about their high school, but they want to look nice and have the freshest gear you could possibly have. So I think changing the brand a bit, and also the kids got to take ownership. Like, yes, there's lots of legendary programs, but we had a thing that said become the tradition. Like build a tradition here, whereas somewhere else you're just becoming part of a tradition. And I think that caught on kind of like wildfire. And then also in those years, in 13 and 14, St. Peter's really wasn't a threat to anybody. So I could go, I don't want to say the word recruit, but I could go visit every 7th and 8th grade organization in the tri-state area and no one would care. And then after a few years of success, I couldn't get myself in the door anywhere because they were like,
Absolutely
no, you're not coming to talk to our kids.
Yeah.
So I think it was just it's an exciting thing. And as I said, we're nestled on the very north shore of Staten Island. So like to get to Monsignor Farrell from me as a kid was 2 buses and about an hour and 15-minute trip. And then Tottenville and out there and St. Joseph by the Sea is even further. So our main goal was to have the kids that live in this area not necessarily think that they had to travel like I did to go play football somewhere. And I think focus on your own neighborhood, going to the little leagues around here has really helped us. And as I said, it's kind of trickled into the parents and the local areas. I think that's helped us build up our brand quite a bit.
No doubt about it. I think that makes all the difference. It's funny you say the uniforms. I did the same thing once, and it had a huge. We did Nike actually. It was 2012.
12. Yep.
And we went to Nike, and we changed.
That swoosh changes, right? That swoosh. That.
You know what else I did? I did we were Tigers. I put the LSU 50-yard line. Yep. I had a tiger on the helmets, and people are like, "What is that?" And it was like,
yes.
But the kids take pride in those things. Like,
yes.
And that was really the time where it started to really change, where kids were looking to have their group have an identity.
Yes.
So by you having Nike uniforms, looking clean, looking good, the kids felt good. And it felt like, this is a change in the right direction.
Yes. I remember the first time I laid out the uniform for them, and now, it's 10 years later, the kids were just sitting there like staring at them like, oh my God, like I felt like I was in like Remember the Titans or something. And I'll never forget, there was a kid, he came to me after I laid the uniforms out, and he's like, Coach, I know you said it's going to be like a 2 or 3 year turnaround. And he was like, but I don't want to do it for the kids that are 2 or 3 years from now. He's like, we want to try to do it right now. We want to be a part of, like, we want to put this STP thing on the map right now. And as I said, that first year we wound up being the #1 seed in the AA. And it sounds ridiculous, but I think when we laid out this uniform, that was when they started to say, like, all right, we want to be a part of this. And it's kind of just trying to keep it that same way. We say the STP way, which we all have our little acronyms and things like that. But I think people, know what we're talking about. I joke, I said, we went to St. John the Baptist one year, which is way out in Long Island. I think it's as far as you could get in the Catholic League. And we went into a deli and they were like, what the hell is STP? And then a couple years later, it's like, oh, St. Peter's is here. So that was like a big change as far as like traveling around the league and stuff. And I think in our area, when you see the yellow helmet, you know who it is. Right. All that type of branding stuff like means, a lot to me.
No doubt. It's so cool. It's such a great way to do it. And then the challenge is obviously always keeping everything fresh, right, over the years, right?
Yes.
So that becomes the next challenge, right?
Well, we've been very blessed because pound for pound, the school only has 500 boys, but pound for
Okay.
pound, we are one of the top. I think on the East Coast, like Nike, gear schools. I don't know what you. So we actually, we all know this type of stuff. Like everybody can wear what they want, but we're actually a Nike sponsored team now. Like Christ the
Right.
King.
Yep.
We have the little logo that means like the orange and black one where and it's very beneficial to look fresh and to make sure even the cleats, like they don't all get cleats, but I make sure they're wearing the right ones. So it's been very, and then annually the banners around our football field
It's been updated,
annually,
right?
Nike and Metro Team Sports have just been all over us and super super helpful. And I will say this, it doesn't mean we did anything that special, but I think when we started, we were maybe one of only two or three teams in the Catholic League that had Metro Team Sports and Nike. And I might be mistaken, but there's 23 teams in the league. About 18 of them now use that, which all started with that email contacting Nike if we could, somehow get ourselves in some Nike uniforms. So now the whole league uses that same kind of distribution center.
That's
It's
really
huge.
cool. That's amazing thing. Talk about as you get to go to enter camp, like how what your guys' structure is like, and how do you guys go through camp, like how the practice set up, what kind of what are your
Absolutely.
emphasis? Yeah.
So again, Coach, again, I don't know if it's old school compared to everybody. I just know around here a lot of the teams don't do it anymore. So what we do is we'll do like 3 days of two-a-days, which would say like,
Good for you.
roughly, the window is like 8:30 to 12, and that'll include meetings and practice time and all that. Then they'll have lunch, and then we'll have another like 2 to 6 o'clock window. And then they'll go home. And that's probably 3 days in helmets. Then by that Saturday, I think we're in shoulder pads, and what we do is we go right to what we would call like our Hell Week or mini. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Like
Like
an
we would do it when I was a kid when we would go, and what we do is I tell the parents when we don't go away to camp. I try to dig into the parents that are guys like us that I could say if you remember how we did camp, I think this is an important part of the experience. So I do require them to then arrive at 5 a.m. We're on the field in the dark at 5:30, where we do
It's the
all the
best feeling ever.
conditioning. All we still do some drills that if you brought up like our strength and conditioning coach, like they'll say this drill isn't really that good. I'm like, yes, but it's what we've done for 30 years, and it increases toughness. Like we'll put the 45-pound plates on the field, and they
Yeah.
get low, and they shove them to the hash. They got to pick it up over their head and run them back. 5 stations, and then sprinting, and we get all that done, and then we have breakfast together. And then we'll have those same 2 practice windows, and then we'll have dinner together, and then we'll do special teams and anything special after dinner, which would probably take us. We're on the field from about 5 a.m. or back and forth. We're there from about 5 a.m. to 9:15, and then they got to do it again for about 5 days in a row. And they don't, I don't want to let anybody in on any secrets. The kids don't realize it, but I tell them if you can make it through 5 days of that type of camp, your opponents are not going to be as tough, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You get to you hear the kids say, oh, we didn't wake up at 5 a.m. for us to lose this game, like type of stuff like that is the culture we're trying to set. It's not easy on parents, so I get it, but I asked them to be all in for just a week or so. And then at the end of that week, I think that takes us to about the following Friday. We will scrimmage. We have to have a day off, so we'll scrimmage on that Sunday legally. We're going
Oh,
out
you can go on
to
Sunday, huh, Coach? You can go on Sunday, even as a
yes after
Catholic or
12.
private.
So on the 13th, I believe it's a Wednesday. As I said, we'll do those 3 days.
Yeah, the
Then we'll
13th is a
go.
Wednesday.
Then we'll go Saturday to roughly Friday. By Friday, I'll tell the kids, all right, you don't have to wake up in the morning anymore. They'll go crazy. And then we'll scrimmage on Sunday, and then we have a regular practice week. Now, our kids are not in school yet, so what we found was when we started doing week 0, we moved that Hell Week concept up a whole week, So now instead of really running them into the ground into week 0, they'll be off from school still. I don't make them come in the morning. They'll show up at say 2:30, and we'll do like a 3 to 6 o'clock practice, regular game week. They survive the camp.
Right.
And then we have a game on Saturday. But we're starting off very excited, like with a bang. So basically, we're scrimmaging at St. Anthony's. So obviously,
Nice.
you know, we're not on their level, but I like to make sure that we're seeing as many fastballs as we can to kind of get ready for the season. And
Love that.
also, St. Anthony's will have 99 kids. We'll have
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
And when they say it's time for their 2s to go, it's still time for our 1s to go. So we'll get
Right.
all that work. And Coach does a great job out there. He invited us out there. I say, Coach, we only have 30, 40 guys, and I don't want to. And he's like, no, we want to get the work. So, even just being invited out there to me is an accomplishment with that type of team. So I feel like we'll be very ready. And then that Saturday night, I think it's the 30th, for the first time ever, St. Peter's, we are playing Curtis
Oh,
as the conclusion of a triple header
nice.
at Staten Island Ferry Hawk Stadium, which is going to be the minor league team. They reconfigured it to a football field.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So
That's cool too.
Peters had never played Curtis in football before. Curtis is the current PSAL champion, so we're
Right.
privileged to get a chance to show what we can do against them. And we're the nightcap game. So
Yeah, you're in prime time.
we expect all of Staten Island, even the location, just to be a part of it. We expect it to be a huge game to open up, but we're happy to be a part of it.
I think that's really cool too. Yeah, the way Dave, I think you know what I mean, like that, to structure camp like that, where you're being extremely transparent and look, like, here guys, we're gone many days of doubles, plug in and go. And the same with the parents, right? Because if a parent had never been in this world, they don't understand. Like, what do you mean my kid's got to be there from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Like, they don't understand a training camp mentality or just that hyper level of focus where we need to get as many practices in and do what we have to do to prepare for what's coming in the future.
Yeah, and honestly,
so
Coach, we've gotten, whether the principal gets an email or someone else, because parents do get concerned sometimes. Like, it's not a lot of people, but they're saying, like, the way they're doing it is kind of archaic. Like, school X and school Y and school Z are not doing this anymore. Why are you guys doing it?
Right.
We're lucky,
you're
though.
Probably one of the very few that do a double, like a true old school double session day.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And again,
they're non-existent.
I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just like, it's the way we do it. And as I said, there have been those sporadic emails saying, like, "Oh my God, this is a lot." But we're also lucky. Our principal is a young guy. He played, I forget what the years were, but he's a Peters alum. He was a captain at Stony Brook.
There you go.
And he's much younger than me, and he's a football guy. And I
probably played against him when I was at Sacred Heart. He probably kicked the shit out of me when I was at Sacred Heart, because we actually took the ferry to go play that, which was amazing too. But that's a whole different podcast.
But again, he's a great guy, but he has our back, especially when we're doing things a certain way, and he supports the way of doing it old school and having our kids look the best and try to work the hardest. And we just kind of go from there. And then, as I said, like, we don't, good or bad, like, we're not ducking away. Our opening game is against the PSAL champ in the biggest venue we could have on Staten Island. So I think those are the things that are necessary to get ready for that opening game.
Attended last year, right? So you guys had a great year last year, and you're looking to continue to capitalize on those things, and you got to keep going to the next step, which is awesome. You guys have really been dominant, so it's really cool. How about recruiting before I let you go?
Yep.
And thanks so much for your time, by the way.
Of course.
Recruiting. What's recruiting been like? Has there been any changes with the transfer portal stuff for you guys? Are things still the same? What's going on there?
Again, Coach, honestly, we've been very lucky. I think we've put about the 15 to 18 kids have gone on to play college football in the past 2 seasons alone. And I think it's really, for me personally, it's because I like to kind of direct them to places that are realistic and where they can actually be successful. Like, I don't tell them, I saw I also, as I said, I did my homework. I saw you had Coach Joe Adam.
Yep.
Like, again, if you would imagine someone that I would try to like preach like, and football is a tool to get you ready for, I will direct more of our kids to go to a camp for St. Anselm than I will per se to Rutgers, when it's realistic. But if we have a Division I kid, and I've been doing it long enough, I'll kind of direct them to the right camps. And I think what happens is, you have a lot of kids winding up playing college football because they're not overshooting their targets. I try to have a good relationship with everybody. As I said, if I call and say, listen, I have this kid that I think is a Division I kid, they will come along, and we try to send everybody everywhere. We have a kid at LIU, or you have a kid at Merchant Marine Academy, like directing that kid to make sure, yes, go to Merchant Marine Academy, check it out. Kids at Maritime. And as I said, I try to direct them in a direction where it's realistic. And I think if you give them realistic goals from the beginning, they have a great chance of playing at the next level. And that goes for everybody. So, we just tell them, if you want to play, we can find a place for you. These are the places where we believe you can play. And like last year, as I said, last year we were very blessed. Our quarterback led the league in rushing touchdowns, and he was first over our running back. Our running back was the AA offensive player of the year for the second year in a row. All right. So these are like, they have more touchdowns alone than some teams, and statistically very successful, and then the individual awards. But I'm very proud of both of them as anybody I could ever be. I'm not telling them because they're breaking rushing records that they can suddenly go to play at Rutgers. I don't give them any type of. So the running back, Jeremiah Williams, he's going to Fairleigh Dickinson, and we're super happy about that. He's playing and he's in the nursing program. And the quarterback, Marco Arruda, who was a great runner and a good enough thrower, and we were super successful, he's playing defensive back at Brockport. So those to me are goals that are realistic, and when they fulfill and they reach their maximum potential, I'm just super happy for them. So recruiting for us, I wouldn't say it's changed really at all, because we were never sending the 10 kids to the high Division I level, and once in a while we'll get a kid that's sprouts out of that group, but we're giving them realistic targets, and I think parents are pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's big.
Awesome
it's extremely
stuff.
important. And what's cool too, Coach, is you have Division I programs in Staten Island, right? I mean, look, Wagner, right there, Stony Brook, not on Staten Island, but that's a realistic, as well. And that's comparable to kind of like, and we talk about this all the time, like where we are, Jersey has so many of those, I call them higher level Division III. Call me biased because I went to Montclair State, right? But there's really good Division III football right here, along with Monmouth University, and then you have Rutgers, which is your bigwig within the state as well. For you guys, you kind of have the same type of thing, and kids kind of only now it's a little different with social media and stuff. They get to expand and see it, but we reference on here all the time that geographically where you are, the schools that are around you, if you want to get to that next level, like that's what you kind of know and what you see, right?
Yes.
So I can only imagine being New York, right? Stony Brook, Wagner, and then maybe now with the Syracuse kind of coming back onto the map, even though that's upstate New York, and we talk about that too. Like nobody looks at, when they think New York, they think New York City. They don't think Long Island. They don't think Syracuse, University of Buffalo. Like they don't think that, but we've seen, recruiting go all those ways. I think your approach in terms, and sometimes those are probably really, really hard conversations to have with some of those kids and say, look, man, I think you're a guy that FDU is your spot. Or,
Yeah, go to this camp. Go to this camp.
Right.
They're like, that's Division III. I'm like, don't ever say that again. Something like that.
Right. Yeah, don't look, look, I had a kid this year. It's like, hey, give me your list of schools of where you want to go. And literally was no Division III. And that's like,
Right.
hey, why? Oh, because you don't know what that is, right? And you just look at it like, oh, that's D3. It's the lowest level. It's not what it's like. You don't understand like what these schools can do for you.
Well, honestly,
the next
Coach,
level.
you know what else it is I don't know how you guys do it. I don't like using the word recruiting, but when we meet with 8th graders, I'm not saying everybody on Staten Island, I'm saying at St. Peter's, I am not telling them that I'm going to get them to go play football at Syracuse.
Right.
I'm a math guy as well, so I still teach math, unfortunately. But I
Damn,
say,
coach. So you got a class schedule, you got head coaching responsibilities, and athletic director.
yeah,
Dave. Like, there you go.
small school. But what I try to tell them when they're 8th graders is that let's just do some math. So like Staten Island last year had 1 Division I full scholarship. I said, so if you go and that coach or that coach or that coach is telling you he's going to help you go to Division I. Now I'm not talking about preferred walk-on and stuff. We have kids at Wagner.
No.
We, as I said, LIU. I say
That's
to
right. I
them that
forgot LIU. I always forget LIU because now
But
it's, it was CW Post. Now it's LIU.
Yes,
but that's
right.
that's big boy ball. In my eyes, I call
Right.
that big boy ball. Like, that's
yes.
legit.
So I try to, on the way in, advertise realistically what's going on Staten Island and in New York City, and then we kind of go from there. And I think when you sell them something on the way in that you can't deliver, that's where you have people get upset.
Correct.
I try to be as honest as possible from the beginning. I'm probably the only coach that relays those stats, that it's like, hey, the odds of a full scholarship for football from Staten Island right now is very, very
Yeah.
low, but they will find
look
you
at the
if you're
numbers.
there. And then, again, another guy, like you said, Coach, I make sure every single kid at St. Peter's goes to Wagner College football camp at least once. So that way they get the Division I experience without
Yeah.
traveling around. We support our local college. I'm a Wagner alum. The wide receiver coach at Wagner right now is a young man named Joe Sluzniak, who ironically was our quarterback in 2014. So we're super proud of him, just like PJ Acuri. So all those connections, I
Right.
make sure that they experience Wagner, and then they kind of branch out from there. If something happens at Wagner, they meet somebody from Buffalo, they get a visit, those types of things. Then we kind of go from there. But realistic expectations that you sell people on the way in, then they're usually probably happy on the way out.
No doubt about it. I think that's an important thing that's really changed too. Going to the right place, the right fit. Big deal. There is mobility if you're that good anyway. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
you're
That's a
better
different
off
approach,
playing or getting an opportunity to play, and then be able to show what you can do. And then you might say, hey, this is where I want to go to school for 4 years. Great.
Yep.
If you're that good, you could always. If you really are that good, then you can move up. I mean, I don't think people should jump in the portal just because they're unhappy. I think that's a mistake. You're not going to get picked up. Like,
Yep.
The portal doesn't work that way. It doesn't reward players who don't play. It rewards, unless you're at the highest, like Power 4 level, and you're,
Yep.
Yeah, you might find a spot. But if you're like at an FCS, or you're at a Division 2 or Division 3 level, and you're not playing, you jump in the portal, there's nowhere for you to go. I mean,
Absolutely. And in our world of not, the kids aren't going to Michigan and Ohio State. I want to make sure, I talk to the coach, do they really have an opportunity to play? As I said, our quarterback is playing defensive back, and he's happy, but it's he's one of the best athletes we've ever had at St. Peter's. He happened to be the quarterback for us. He's having a great time at Brockport, and he'll get on the field. And again, if you were meant to be a Division I, defensive back, we'll see. You can show that, or you're just going to be happy there the whole time and have a great career.
I think that's 100% correct. And the going to the right fit is the best way to do it, and gives you the best opportunity. Because there is no, if you go to a place you slightly overreach, they're not trying to develop you like they might have in the old days, because they can bring in another transfer. So if you really do overreach, like you could overreach, like you could be a development guy, you could overreach a little bit. They bring you in, they used to be able to develop you and see if you can, get to where you need to be. Now it's a situation, if you come in the first 2 years, you really aren't able to do the job. They're just bringing in other transfers in at any level to replace you. So
it's hard.
So it's really important to go into a place that you're a good fit for. You get an opportunity, and hopefully by your second year, you're starting to play a decent amount, and then you're in the driver's seat.
Absolutely,
because that development is just it's gone, and coaches have changed from that standpoint too. Their mentality is less on the development side and more on the production side, with some there are some rare exceptions, but their job is, hey, can I get this guy to produce now? And
yes, and honestly, Coach, I didn't want to. You beat me to it. I will say that as I'm getting older and doing it for more years, the more and more college coaches that I meet who are more advanced than I am, because they coach college and I'm a high school coach. I notice more and more the focus is on the recruiting and the phone calls and picking up and sending handwritten
Not
letters.
X's and O's.
Not like I've had some guys asking questions about, hey, I like what you guys are doing on offense, and then I get to talking, and I'm like, this guy is a college coach,
Right, right. And you're on the
because-
board going through the intricate, like, oh, hey, he's going to be in a 7.
Yes.
Do this, and
Yes.
these guys are looking at you like, coach,
Yes.
my Twitter post, I gotta get a Twitter post up.
Exactly. I think there's such a large focus on that, which makes sense. I think that's a place where it would change. Whereas I think, 10 years ago, you could have a guy come and visit and you could talk X's and O's and you could probably learn something. What I think has changed quite a bit is there's less and less I could learn from the guys who come to recruit.
It's a great point. And also, a great point. I mean, do you still, and this is my, I'll just finish with this. It ties in, Coach, because we don't want to take up too much of your time. Do you still see the same traffic in terms of coaches coming into the building and recruiting, that, hey, I want to see such and such and such down here, do you still see the amount of foot traffic? Because we tracked it this year in the fall and in the spring cycle, as to who was coming through the building. I mean, what position coach they were, what I mean? What level they were at, where they were from. We tracked all of it. And we're going to keep tracking it to just see how much the amount, but for our standpoint, like less and less actual foot traffic in the building and less and less communication directly with the head coach. We reference it here on all the time that in order to get a recruit, you used to have to go through the head coach. And now with social media, you don't have to do that. You can message what you think it is on X or whoever is running their account, or go through the middleman or directly to a parent. Are you seeing some of that, Coach?
Yes. So I think the foot traffic is much less. And I also think that, it ties to the fact, and I don't mean the kids we have now, like there were a couple years, as I said, you'll have that standout athlete. And I think that the recruiting coaches just want to make sure they come and take a picture with that kid. And I think that gets the foot traffic up. But just spending the time to come to the building and say hello and which kids and what about your current freshman, I don't see that as much anymore. Where they arrive most of the time knowing the list of seniors.
Absolutely.
And again, not that long ago in the Catholic League, we had what was college night, and there would be 50, 60 colleges just for the Catholic High School Football League players at the Senior Bowl. And now that night doesn't exist anymore because you can't get them all to come down at the same time. So the foot traffic for the league is less, but again, recruiting is different. But just to be fair, we don't have at St. Peter's at the current moment the kids at all the colleges. We have a kid. He's actually currently on the Philadelphia 76ers Las Vegas team. He was tremendous basketball player, obviously, but he was also a wide receiver for us, and probably the best football player like I ever coached. So when people say, "Who's the best football player you ever?" I was like, "Well, he played basketball at St. John's." If that summarizes everything that we're
Right.
talking about, but when he was getting recruited, which he's now, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, every college on earth came through the building. And
Right.
most of the time it was just to say, hey, I
Yep.
met this kid and put a picture up, you know. So I think it's obviously that goes back right to recruiting, is that if you have 2 or 3 of those kids, there's a trickle down effect for recruiting in your building. But I think half the time they're just there to, see that kid and take a picture and not necessarily look at your other kids and evaluate them.
Right.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Coach, awesome stuff. Really appreciate you coming on. Great conversation, a ton of fun talking to you. I'm sure you'll have a fantastic season this year, and
Thank you.
And best of luck. You enjoy the last couple of weeks of vacation.
Yes.
Until it all ramps up. But
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. Anytime, listen, you want to come on again and at postseason do some X's and O's stuff, we'd love to do that.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
a lot of
excited.
guys don't want to give it away before, but after the season, we can go, do some clinic stuff and let you go and show some of the things that you do really well.
Absolutely, Coach. Be my pleasure.
No doubt about it. Have a great day, Coach.
All right, guys. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Coach.
much, and great job, and good luck. I think a lot of football guys are probably jealous of your podcast as well. Everybody,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's trying to get started with something like this, but you guys are doing a great job. So I'm sure a lot of people are
Appreciate it,
paying
Coach.
attention.
It's
Thanks,
not a
Coach.
quick-
We really
it's-
appreciate it. Have a great day and have a great week. All right.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks,
Good,
guys.
Coach. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Oh, that was a great, fantastic podcast. I really enjoyed that. Coaches really, really got things rolling there. It's
I love that mix of old school, new school, right? Like I
Yeah.
love look as we talk
he's still in
about it.
2-a-days.
I'm that tweener, dude. The fact that he can still do 2-a-days,
I guess
it
New
gets
York
me
must
so-
allow it.
But I also think again, it goes back to the culture built, right? Like it's always that. Hey, and look, being where I'm at, traditional program, old school, winningest coach in the history of New Jersey high school football. That name is still there. Like even at a place like where I'm at, to do that, it takes something different, right? You can't just roll into a program and say, hey, we're doing 2-a-days. And like you said, he gets that email that's, hey, what is this? This is the way we've done it. He's where I don't think you could be able to do that if you're a first, like you're a new head coach, you roll in there and say, hey, we're doing 2-a-days. I don't think that could happen. One, you know what I mean? I don't think most admins would be on board with it, right?
Right.
But I think because he has the right alignment in the fact that, those guys back him in that, hey, this is what we do. It's only for set amount of days. And then we get back to normal schedule, right? Like, but I love it in the fact that it still adds that bit of, because we talk about, yes, we want to, feed the cats and make sure everybody stays healthy and fresh. But at the same time, you still have to get that bit of football in there to push the envelope a little bit, because when shit goes down, how are guys going to react? Are they conditioned to it? Right. Like I still like that piece of it in that short amount of time where you can hammer it home and then look, we don't do it anymore. Right. Like that's a really interesting concept. And the fact that he can continue to do it, I think is really awesome. Cause like you said, we could talk to probably 100 coaches, Dave, and maybe 5 are still doing 2-a-days. Right.
Right.
And I like the way that he really has the structured with it, the scrimmage. Like he's going to go play and hop in the ring with a St. Anthony's on Long Island, which is a top national type program, and throw punches with them. Like even a bigger size school, he even talked like a better, you know what I mean? Just like a better overall type of national program. And he's going to roll it out there and throw some punches and get better for that first game, who he's not shying away from, right? Like he's playing Curtis, which is a high level program in the state of New York. They're up there every single year with top level athletes. They're a top tier team, and he's going to roll out week 0, game 1 of his season against a top tier opponent prime time, right? That's really, really awesome. And they're playing at like a bigger venue, right? So that first adds a little bit of something else to it, you know. I like doing that coming out of the gates for your team, right? Like you're kind of rewarding them for all that hard work and toughness and stuff they did in the summer in that short little time period. Like, hey, our first game is, you know, this, which I think is really cool. And a lot of coaches should really take a look at doing that. Make first game. Look, every game should matter the same. I get that, but you need a little extra juice to kick off the season with that. Good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like win, loss, that first game should be something different, and you can build on that, right? If you win, hey, this kicks it off. If you lose, hey, that's a huge learning experience, and now let's go run the table, right? Like, I think that's really, really cool. That's why I like Battle Beach, right? It's like why I like playing in some type of a different venue. I love that we're opening on a Thursday night. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's something different. I think that adds to it. Coaches should really look at that more. If I were a head coach, like I would do that every single year. Make that first game something different.
No doubt. No doubt. It's that change of pace keeps it fresh, you know. So I think
right. And everybody's juiced for the first game. You know what I mean? Like, and that's everybody. I'm talking parents are juiced, administrators are juiced, the cheerleaders, the band. Everybody's been working all summer, which makes fall sports different. You have a true preseason for fall sports where you're not doing anything other than that sport, right? Like there's no school, hyper focused in the summer, right? Like this is what we're doing. Like the only thing on the schedule for the day is practice. And then starting a year off like that, hey, we're going to play a game. And then next week we're in school, right? So here's what we're going with. Like, it's like everybody, like fans, parents, you know, game one is, you know, grandma and grandpa are coming in from wherever to see it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, I just really enjoy that first game of the year. And I think it trickles down because you can see it. Like some of the biggest games in college football are that opening weekend. I mean, we're going to have the number one team against the number 2 preseason ranked team. Ohio State and Texas are playing the first game of the season, right? Whereas, you know, it's not Alabama playing freaking, you know, whoever FCS program as just like a money game. Like you see a lot of really good matchups early because everybody wants that atmosphere created around the game. I think it's really cool. And I think it sets you up for success down the road because it's a long season.
Well, no, there's no doubt about it. I think the ability to do different things, get them excited, get them jazzed about stuff, and like that makes a huge difference in the program, especially when you're trying to grow. And then once you get there,
oh yeah,
towards the top, you have to keep doing it, right? You got to because it continues to
consistency,
be a challenge. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So pretty cool.
It's awesome.
Great pod, man. We're back Friday.
Right now we're back Friday with Cece Murray. She's the head strength and conditioning coach at Laguna Beach High School, but works with a ton of NFL prospects in terms of getting them ready for the combine. She's a Feed the Cats, Tony Holler trainer. Really interested to talk to her on Friday. It's going to be a really good. It's going to be awesome.
That is, yeah, no doubt. That's gonna be a great one. Can't wait for that. All right, till Friday.
Yeah,
See you then.